Sorry.
Are you ready to go again, Gavin?
Yeah, I'm ready when you are.
All right. Well, we're going to get you going so we can break at noon, and go ahead and reshare your screen, and we should be good to go.
All righty. Let's see. So this will stop the other screen sharing. Okay. Okay. Should be live.
I don't see it yet.
Okay, let's see.
There it is. I see it now. Okay, we're good.
Okay.
The room is yours, Gavin. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, you're welcome. Glad to be back. Boy, it goes fast. Hopefully, hopefully we can get all there's so much we can cover. I mean, this is a multiple day topic, but oops, here I am. Multiple day topic, but what I'm hoping for is for people to take away from this like one through line. In other words, there's so many different ways to buy properties, so many different ways to put the deal together. But by the end of today, I think everybody should have at least one that you can follow A, B, C, D, E all the way through to the end. So that's still on the agenda for today. That's what we're expecting to do. So as you can see, I've already advanced the slides to finding foreclosure. So the first section, we talked about the structure of financial encumbrances against property, how any one of those could foreclose. And that's mostly so you guys understand that framework. Now it's time for us to go and find these deals, and then maybe just as a preview. So I'll explain how to find them, and then I'll explain what to say to the person, and then we'll go into a little bit of math. We'll give some suggested formulas. Honestly, I'm always a little hesitant to give formulas because the formula never exactly works, but you need to know the framework and which ones have variables and et cetera. So we'll do some framework formula, and then hopefully that'll carry us through. So I want to pop over here to a quick question, and then we'll get into where do we go to find these. Michelle says, located a foreclosure that sold, according to the previous owner, a bank. Talked to title and talked to my hands. This has been 5 months ago. Title told me to talk with the listed lender and still can't get through. Any other way to get to the new owner? Land is a good house with a gutted barn from a bad investment to finish the rehab. I have 2 buyers for the land. So as frustrating as it is and as circular as it is circular, the answer is pretty simple. So whoever is the owner of record, that's the person on title, is the owner. Now there's a little window of time when somebody buys a property before the new records can be updated. But essentially, whoever is the current owner, you can go and find that person or that contact information, and they say, no, I'm sorry, I don't own it. Then you just ask them direct, where did you, to whom did you sell it, and about when. If they think they sold it 5 months ago, but the title is still in their name, there's breakdown in the system. And so, yeah, you're dealing on the fringes at this point because, if we're in the middle of the standard transaction, pretty much title transfers and the records get updated within a week or two. So anyway, the answer is whoever the owner of record is, that's the answer. They're the owner. And if they swear an oath that they sold it, but they don't have any documentation or who they sold it to, it's possible, especially if it's a bank, that maybe they've got their wires crossed and whoever you're speaking with doesn't have the full information. But anyway, the only way even if you did identify a second person who was the new purported owner, they would have to produce some form of documentation showing that they are in fact the owner. Because whoever, and this is actually going to dovetail in with our next section, the county records are the final word on ownership. So they record what's called a deed. There's several different types of deeds, but they record a deed, and that is the owner of the property. And if that's who the county says the owner is, that's legally the owner. Now, like I said, there's a little float between new owners, but it shouldn't be more than a couple of these days, typically. So I know it's frustrating, especially when dealing with institutions, that the individual on the phone may or may not know the full information, but that is, for our purposes, whoever did at the county recorder is the owner. And if they say that they're not, then they can tell us who it is. So I know it's frustrating. It's also kind of interesting to run down those leads. What I always say to people is, look, listen, if you've got that one, the white whale, the Moby Dick, if you have, this is your white whale, by all means, keep hunting it, but also look for other fish. If you're a fisherman, I never read the book. I'm familiar with the societal implications. But wasn't he a fisherman also? And then there was maybe he was a whaler. But in any case, go look for other deals also. And if I keep looking for this one, that's certainly fine too. All right, friends. So we need to go find a list of people who are facing foreclosure. And so the very top most reliable official word is the county recorder. Okay, I'm going to go green. So the county recorder, again, that's where all the public records are housed. So that is the final word on who owns a piece of property. It is the official list of title encumbrances. So the county recorder has the deed, it has the mortgages, it has the liens. That's the final word on who has a claim against a piece of property. So when I say go to the county recorder, you can either physically go there. Now, obviously, there's a certain temporary measure in place in many areas where the public offices are not open to the public. You could still call the office usually and see if they have online access. Many do. Many actually have fairly robust online data. That's the word I'm looking for. Well, accessibility, I guess, of all their records, a database that you can access easily. Now, some don't. Obviously, it depends. It's kind of crazy. Even within the same state, county to county, they're all responsible for their own record keeping and availability to the public. So, number one, in better days, you can just physically walk into the county and go to the recorder's office and point you to where the foreclosure listings are, and they can probably help you. In lieu of that, call the number. So anyone should be able to do a Google search that says whatever county you're in or whatever county you're targeting. So in other words, you could certainly have your investment focus be not where you live. That's fine. So whatever county you're targeting, you can call the number again, Google search. So we live in Ada County, Idaho. If you were to search Ada County, Idaho foreclosure lists, I'm sure there's lots of third-party companies that are going to try to sell me the information that is technically available for free. It might behoove you, by the way, to subscribe. In fact, that's one of my lists. That's one of my things down here. Let me go. I got ahead of myself. Let me go in order first. So go to the county recorder yourself and say, where's the list? And they'll say, here it is. If it's easy and accessible, then you can just go with that. Realtor might be able to assist you because they have access to public records as well. In addition to a realtor, what I'd also will put is a realtor or a title company, because the title company deals, that's their job. Well, one of their jobs, yeah, you see what it is. I'm trying to spell it all the way out, but after they process a closing, they send the documents for recording. So they have a direct connection to the local recorder, and they may have it may be a two-way street. So they send the deed and they send the mortgages over for the county to document, but they can also pull information and make it available to their customers, that's us. Okay, so you ask a realtor, do you have access to the public information? So in this area, I have, via my MLS, I have access to the tax information, so I can verify who the correct owner is. I also have some limited access to, I can see usually the name of a mortgage company, even if I don't necessarily see the current balance, if that makes sense. But in any case, so a realtor may have access, a title company may have access. So again, you call each one of those and say, do you have access to the public records? Can you provide me a list of current or recent foreclosure listings? Okay, and again, this is not the first time they've heard these questions. Either yes or no. If they say yes, then say great, send it over. That's a subscription. Like I told you before, if you do a Google search for the name of your county and foreclosure listings, I promise you some of the top the top Google results will be things like foreclosureusa.com. That probably really is one. I don't want to either endorse or besmirch any of these companies because I don't have direct information. I will tell you that any company that claims to give you a nationwide subscription is probably going to be less effective, not because I don't think they mean well, not because I don't think that they do in fact have some data. It's just that their data management seems to lag a little bit. They may be really, really good in some major markets, but if you're not either where their headquarters are or one of the major markets they're focusing in, your data may be old. It may not be cultivated, meaning, and this is honestly the worst offender, whenever there's a data company, they don't remove old records. So in other words, you'll see an ad that says, look up foreclosures in your county, and you'll click on it. It'll be like, oh, there's 7,000. You're like, oh man, that's so many. Well, but if you actually were to look deeper, you'd see that 6,400 of them sold, over the last 5 years. They're already done. So technically, they are foreclosure listings, but they're not active properties. If that makes sense. So they don't do a good job of removing old records, is what I'm saying. So if you can get a free 7-day trial, if you can, pay a nominal fee to get a peek at it, it's certainly worth test driving. The best subscription services I've found are the ones that are generated locally and then distributed locally. There's a great company here in this area that the public-facing website is not great, and so you usually have to go to the intranet in the county building to use the computers, which you can do, which I did for many years. But then what happened was I would go there every morning to look at the new foreclosure listings for that day, and then I would go immediately to try to contact the people. Well, before long, there was a nice young lady who would sit 1 or 2 computers down, and I could see that she was doing the same thing. And so I said, hey, what are you doing? And she said, I'm pulling up these listings. I said, oh, that's what I'm doing. That's cool. Are you an investor? And she says, no, I work for a data company. I'm like, oh, really? Dang it. Well, the fact that she's there also, I just saved myself 3 hours or 2 hours, if you include travel and typing, depending on how many records there are, 2 to 3 hours. So on one hand, I'm disappointed because there's obviously a distribution list that they're going to be competing. But on the other hand, if she's already there typing, I'll just pay the subscription instead of me doing it, right? And they delivered as a spreadsheet that I could sort. I can copy and paste, all that kind of stuff. So look for a subscription. Again, use Google. It is your friend. I'll obviously use judgment as well. So when you use Google, you have to filter the results through your own common sense, I hope. The next way is to advertise. So there's a lot of folks that do We Buy Houses signs. If you wanted to specifically target foreclosures, you could say stop foreclosure, avoid foreclosure, we buy houses in foreclosure. You see how I'm doing this? Any signal word that you want to put in there on your signs. Or if you do an online ad, there's a lot of folks that are dabbling with Facebook or Instagram, any of that kind of stuff. I think there's probably a way to generate real estate leads. I mean, I know there is a way. The 100% guaranteed way to generate real estate leads online is to spend a ton of money on ads. And the question is, do you generate enough business to pay for the ads and profitability? That is a legitimate question, but it's all the same. If you're targeting foreclosures, use the word stop foreclosure, avoid foreclosure, sell your house before foreclosure, any of that kind of stuff. And then, of course, networking. I know somebody mentioned earlier, how do you network? Networking is just going through your own sphere of influence and just saying, hey, I don't know if you've heard, I'm doing real estate. If you need anyone who can, if you know anyone who needs to sell their house, let me know. I might be able to help, right? So let me see if I'm trying to make sure. So I think that's it. Let me get to a couple of these questions over here. Alexis, do you use any other lead source other than foreclosure? So I personally, foreclosure is my bread and butter. This is the main thing that I've been doing for 17 years. But I guess the second one would be networking. So I answered your question. I think having 2 or 3 finding methods at any given time will be more consistent than one. My 80% to 90% focus has always been foreclosures, but I'm always networking. Hey, what do? I buy houses. I fix them up. Cool. here's my card. Sometimes I get a call, sometimes I don't. So always networking. And what was the other one? I was going to say signs too. I've definitely got deals from signs. And the only thing I'd warn you guys about is, well, I don't know if it's a warning, I'd prepare you for is expectations. So normally what you do is whenever you think of advertising, you think of, okay, how many impressions am I going to get versus how many responses, right? So if it's an online ad, especially if it's one of these social ones, you can show how many people have been served the ad and how many people interacted with it, right? Roadside signs, you don't have the instant feedback, but you can basically decide, okay, if I buy a box of 50 signs and I put out 10 or 15 a week for the next 4 weeks, how many calls did I get, right? And usually there's a ratio. For me, it's about I don't know, 3 or 4 calls per 100 signs. And that's fine because the signs aren't that expensive. If I get one deal out of it, it pays for like 10 sign orders. So that's basically what I've done. So mostly foreclosure, and I'll talk about all the different ways that we advertise. So this is just getting the list. This is just you getting yourself a list of names and addresses. We'll go over advertising in a moment, but foreclosure advertising, I do signs, and of course always networking. In fact, all the deals I've done this year so far have come via previous relationships. So networking is a huge component. I know I'm sort of glossing over it, but also it's something that you can't force. It's just something that develops over time. But yes, always be networking, always pass the word around, have some cards printed out. Business cards, who uses business cards? Well, you do, I guess, right? I mean, have something that you can put into their hands. I buy houses, right? Not all of them are going to stick, but you want people to think of you when they have a house that might need to be sold. And again, that's for friends and family too, right? So if they need to sell their house, that's a direct hit. But a lot of times my referrals are a friend of a friend. And yeah, I think you'll find that as well. Jeff says, is list source good pre-foreclosures? I don't know. I'm not familiar with that service. Give it a try. Can you try it for very low risk? Julie says, Renatus iOS is awesome as well. That is true. So we do have is it a compendium? I don't know. We offer a branded software called Renatus iOS. And if I understood correctly, I think Bob Tierney, is it Bob or somebody else? I think there's going to be a whole Renatus iOS module at the one of the last segments of today. So yeah, it's a software. It's a database, just like we talked about. It's a database. I will tell you that they pull all the data from public records, just like every database. So the ground zero for all this stuff is the county recorder. Everything else below this is us looking for different ways to package the information so we can use it easier. I mean, I'd much rather, instead of going to the county, what used to happen is I'd pull up the original document and I would scan it and I would write down the name and the address and sometimes the balance, whatever was listed, the foreclosure date, whatever was available. And then I'd close it and I'd open up the new document and I'd have to do it manually. But if you order a subscription, then it's a spreadsheet already. So it's easier to manipulate. So yeah, great point. Brian says, what are the different exit strategies once finding the seller of property? So I could boil every exit strategy in real estate down to either short or long. So either a short, which is like a flip, and short is of course relative. Sometimes you can do a flip in a week, and sometimes it takes 4 or 5 months. But basically anything less than 12 months, I believe, is short, and that actually from a tax perspective as well. Short-term cap gains. Anyway, so anytime we're looking at real estate and how do we make money, either I make a lump sum by selling it quickly for more than I paid for it, or I collect money over time renting it out. So those are all the exit strategies are under those two categories. And of course, you can find a hybrid where you rent it out for a couple of years and then you sell it. It's still one of those two categories. So yeah, those are them. Either quick flip or collect cash flow and later you can sell it or not. Yeah, Bob just confirmed that that he's going to go into detail. So we'll put a pin in this. I'll just reiterate that the county recorder again is where all the data comes from. The only question of whether I should pay for a subscription or not is, in fact, the ease of manipulating the data and the usefulness it is to me. So it is worth paying for that, by the way. I do believe in paying a subscription to have the data served up to me that I can instantly use instead of the time that I used to spend looking at each individual document and pulling the information manually. So, okay, so now you've got a list. Does everyone feel like they can find a list? If for whatever reason you feel like you don't know this, I'll just be as explicit as possible. Whatever your county is, just do this exact Google search. Your county, maybe your state, in case, Orange County, I think they got one in California, they got one in New York, they have an Orange County in Florida. Anyway, you understand. So put your state too. Orange County, California, foreclosure list, recorder's office, any of that, whatever that cover. Ultimately you want to get the official county website and go research that first, because if it's free and it's easy and it's a great database, then do that. But then from then on, like I said, once you do that Google search, there's going to be ads served up to you from companies that provide this type of stuff. So I believe at this point, everybody on the conversation today should be able to get access to a local list of foreclosures. I believe it completely. If anyone feels like they can't, this is a good time to chime in. But I feel like that's what we've just covered. So, assuming that is satisfactory, let's say what happens after I have the list. All right. I need to stop annotating. I can't move it ahead. I'm gonna try this. It was that. Okay. So okay. It was the annotating. It wasn't letting me advance the slides. Okay. So normally if I was in the room with you, I would do that Google search together. But since there's folks from all over the country today, do the Google search. Try some of them out, by the way. It's not like you're going to do the right one and the rest are wrong. You're going to find varying degrees of accessibility from these different companies that provide services. Test a few out, spend a couple bucks. Don't spend a lot. Don't, do the free trial and see how the database looks, and then move on from there. So, okay. So now this next segment is, I understand the foreclosure process. I've got a list of people who have been issued a foreclosure notice. Again, that's either a notice of default or a list pending if it's a judicial state. Let's see here. If it's a judicial state, it's a list pendens, which just means there's been a suit filed. If it's non-judicial, it's an NOD, notice. Looks like a WAD, notice of default. Right? It's the same functionality. It's just a different procedure. But basically, actually, you know what might be a good idea? I maybe could have done this a moment ago, but I'm doing it now. Each of you take a moment, or write a note. You don't have to do it right this second. Although if you have a second screen, you certainly could. If you have never done this, you should. You should type out foreclosure process. Actually, you know what I can do? I just realized. I think I can just type on this, can't I? Yeah. So type in foreclosure process in your state. I just read through it. If you don't already know, and I apologize because a lot of times I'm coming to this situation. There's brand new people. There's people who've been doing it for a while, and so I guess we're sort of starting with the idea that you understood the benchmarks of foreclosure, and so that's why we're covering this right now. If you were to just search this foreclosure process, whatever your state is, you'll see a few websites. A lot of them are law firms, like legal firms, that just give a summary of of, okay, in this state, usually it starts with X state is a judicial state, right? So if it's judicial versus non-judicial, they're all homes for sale. So it doesn't matter to us. The only thing is, what document am I looking for? Am I looking for the lis pendens or the NOD, which is the notice of default? It's procedurally the same. I'm looking for a person who's about to lose their house and then see if they need to sell it, right? So, but this is helpful for you to understand that you're on the right path. So Google search the foreclosure process in your state. That should help you to know that you're on the right track. The other good thing is, Jeffrey says, if it's a notice of default or lis pendens, does that mean it's officially pre-foreclosure or in the process of foreclosure? So let me go big picture here for a moment. You see, I'll just do it on the screen because I'm already here. So basically, you've got miss a payment equals delinquent. Can you guys see the typing that I'm typing on here? I hope it is. I'll assume you can, because I've been typing extra information on the screen. If you haven't seen it, then that's a bad thing. So if you miss a payment, you're delinquent. If they give the notice, which is either the lis pendens or the NOD, now you are what we call pre-foreclosure, which is what we're targeting, pre-foreclosure. That means the public has been notified that the bank is taking action to get the house back. And then the sale date, and they give the auction. They publish the sale date, and then the auction takes place. The auction is the moment of foreclosure. So, but what we're doing when we say we're foreclosure investing, like this whole process, hold on, I'm trying to shift back over to, can I shift over without removing this? Anyway, I guess I can't. What I'm trying to articulate here is, oh, here it is. Done now. There it is. This whole process is like capital F foreclosure, but the actual time that we're dealing is any time before the auction. The actual moment of the sale is the foreclosure. Does that make sense? So the terminology is a little loosey-goosey. If I say, oh, I got a foreclosure house, it could theoretically be someone who's behind the payments, somebody has a notice of default issued. I could have gone to the auction. I could have gone after the auction and bought it from the bank. Any one of those are theoretically foreclosure properties because there's some part of the process. But what we're targeting is people before the sale takes place. Any person who has not, because once it forecloses, now the bank owns it or somebody else bought it. So that is it. How do I get out of this? Oh, I know. This. Got it. Okay. Good question. Is that helpful? I think it is. So it casts a wide net. It's anytime before the actual moment of sale. Now, of course, from a practical standpoint, if the sale is in an hour, the likelihood of me conducting a transaction prior to that is slim. It's happened. But I've got people to get a sale postponed or canceled and able to purchase. But any time in that whole month-long process where they're not making payments before the sale date. But the reason why we're focusing on the notice of default and lis pendens is that's basically when the public is keyed in. I don't have direct access to every single person who missed 30 days or 30 days late or 60 days late. Now, there are actually databases you can buy from credit bureaus that will sell you the information of people who are 120 days late. That would be something you could target as well. I never have. I just saw a public record one. But yeah. So now I've got a list of people who have been issued a notice publicly that they're being foreclosed. Now, the reason why that's important, not only because I need the information, but the person who owns the house is issued a document saying you're about to lose your house. And then shortly thereafter, I show up and say, hey, let's talk about this. So it's perfect timing for me. Let's see here. Steven says, is there judgment before you have a sales date? So I think typically what happens, so in the notice of default, actually, let me go back one more step. So non-judicial, the whole foreclosure process is very systemized. It's already built into the whole sale process. When you buy a house, you get a mortgage, which is the note, the money that you owe the bank, and a deed of trust. The deed of trust is a document that secures the mortgage to the property. And it says right in there that if you violate the terms of the mortgage, then we'll foreclose. And then they just go ahead and do it. It's administrative. In a judicial state, they actually file a suit, and a judge says yes, you can proceed with the foreclosure. So, but for our practical purposes, what we mostly just want to know is once that's been notified, the homeowner's been notified that they're about to lose their house. We want that to take place, because then we come in and say, hey, seems like you might need a solution with your house. Does that make sense? So that's why we're doing it at this time. Let's see here. So William says, so even if these properties are in the MLS, they can be negotiated for a lower price, even if they're represented by an agent? Possibly, yeah. In most MLSs, I say that with my limited experience, because obviously there's thousands of MLSs, but in the ones I've encountered, if a home is in foreclosure, they have to disclose that in the MLS. So you can still list your home and try to sell it before the auction date, but it has to be disclosed. So you could do a search for, in your area, all homes that are in active foreclosure. In other words, they're in foreclosure, there's a sale date set, and are in the MLS. And yeah, you can offer anything you want. Now you do still have to, if it's in the MLS, you do have to make an offer through the real estate agent, because they have a contract to represent that person. But yeah, you could certainly pull a list of MLS properties that are in foreclosure and offer whatever you want. And if they are urgent enough, they could accept your offer. Yeah, great. Let's see what else. Jeffrey, in your experience, how typical do you see a homeowner that goes into pre-foreclosure satisfy the mortgage payment and becomes current? You know what? It's hard to put a percentage. It's really not that uncommon, somebody to have a temporary hardship and then either borrow money from a friend or a credit card or a 401k. There's different mechanisms in place when it relates to a personal residence. It's common enough. I think the majority of homes that start foreclosure end up finally being sold, but there's certainly a good core group of them. I don't worry about that, by the way. If I get a list of foreclosures, I'm going to pursue the whole list. And if I talk to somebody who says we got it resolved, I say, great, congratulations. So I'm not worried that a huge bulk of the list is not going to pan out. I just know that some may not need to sell. So Steven says, so once the list pendants is filed, the lender is just waiting on a sales date from the courts. Yeah, more or less. Basically, think of it this way. So each state, I mean, anyone could do this. This is another Google search. And hopefully, to me, when I tell you to do a Google search, it used to be where I felt apologetic because I'm supposed to be teaching you, but all the content that we're going through is technically out there somewhere. I'm just organizing it for you in a certain way. But I'm actually purposely showing you that if you don't know something, just look for it and research it. Anything. Like you could have sat down this morning and said, I'm going to spend 5 hours today trying to learn how to be a foreclosure investor. You could have gone down a rabbit hole of any number of different chat rooms and discussion boards and blog posts, and you probably could have gotten people saying, hey, it's terrible, I lost my life savings. You could get people say, hey, I started last year, I made $500,000. It's all out there. And so I use Google all the time if I don't know something. Anyway, what I was going to say is each state has the entire foreclosure process is already predefined by the state law. And so you could go to your state constitution and look for the real estate area, look for the foreclosure process and read it. And so, yes, the specific date of a specific property is going to be issued by the court, but the timeframes and the process and the methods that everybody follows is exactly the same within the same state. So for you to Google Illinois foreclosure process, or actually Illinois statute, real estate statutes, and you can just read it. It's not. I mean, the whole civil code or whatever of every state constitution is thousands of pages, but the real estate section is probably only 3 or 4 pages. So for you to read exactly what it says about homeowners and their rights and lenders and their rights and how to recover your money by foreclosing, it's probably worth doing. But anyway, so the entire process is already set out in the state constitution, but the specifics for any individual property will be issued by the court. So, all right. So now you've got a list of people who have been issued a big foreclosure notice. They've been put on notice by the banks that they're about to get foreclosed. And Dave, I see your number. I see your question here. I'm going to defer it for just a moment, but I see it. He's asking what to say, what not to say to the homeowner. So I'll get into what to say to him, and then a roundabout way, I'll say what not to. So we've got a list of homeowners. How do I get in front of them? We've already had a few questions about phone calls and texts. And so I want to be a little bit transparent, but also, what's the cross between transparent and disclaiming? So anything you decide to do is at your risk. Normally I don't do texting unless I've interacted with the person. Once I've interacted with somebody in any way, shape, or form, I will then text. In fact, I like texting. I prefer it sometimes if I just need to give someone information or ask a question. You know how people are these days. They are sometimes 10 times more likely to just reply to a quick text. Like, have you ever called somebody and they didn't pick up and you left a message and then they text you like, what do you need? Yeah, that's just what we all do. Anyway, so I will never text unsolicited, but I honestly will call sometimes if I can find a phone number. That is, watch this, if the number is publicly available somehow. So in other words, I did one actually live in front of a group in Phoenix a couple of years ago. Anyway, we had a name and address of a person who was in pre-foreclosure. I just put the name and address into Google, and it pulled up a painting contractor that was the same name. So we figured it was the person who was listed in the foreclosure, and his phone number was right there on a painting website. So if it's publicly accessible, I think you can call the number. That's my risk tolerance. I don't know if it's legal or not. Honestly, no one's ever challenged me, and I've never been sued, and et cetera, et cetera. If somebody knows more about the do not cost, then go with your knowledge. But I believe that if I find their number on the website, I can call them. So like call the number and say, hey, notice that you're asking for foreclosure. I'm an investor. What are your plans? I'll actually go through that whole conversation in a moment. But I just wanted to let you know on a phone call. I believe that if you have the name and the address and you put it into Google, and if it yields a phone number, I think you can use it. That's not a legal pronouncement. That's just practical. That's what I do. Direct mail is the core. That's the bread and butter. So when I get a list, what I usually do is I sort geographically. So in this area, we've got, I cover basically 3 counties. And within those 3 counties, there's probably 10 municipalities. And so I've done deals in all those areas, but I've got a core that I would prefer. So in other words, if you were to say, where's your ideal, if I were to drop your ideal property in your lap, where would it be? And I've got 2 or 3 different areas that I would love to just, any deal would be gold in that area. And for you, if you don't know where that area is in your city or town or county, don't worry about it. Trial and error. Just give it a try. I've done deals everywhere, and some that once I went through a deal, I decided, I don't want to do any more deals here. That's fine, but I still did a deal. Anyway, so I get the list, I sort it based on priority, and then I will send letters and postcards. I don't know why my accent came out there. I don't have an accent. Letters and postcards. And Terrence has chimed in. Zaba search is free and an old standby for locating people. So that's an FYI to the group. Zaba search. I don't know anything about it. Not an endorsement. Just reading it out loud. So I'll do letters and postcards. And here's the beauty of direct mail. If you send one letter, it's almost like gambling, because who knows if they're going to open it, if they're going to read it, if they're going to call, if they're going to think about it. But if you send multiples, your chances of interaction go higher. So I guess what I'll say about direct mail is that if I had a budget, so by the way, you'll have to figure out what your budget is, because you got to buy paper, you got to print stuff. You can use third-party mailing companies and just upload the list and they'll do it. there's a cost obviously associated with that, usually a cost per item. And so figure out what your budget is. Yeah, we're in business. We got to spend some money. And don't waste it. But advertising is one of the things that you're going to have to spend some money on, and hopefully you're making the best choice that that will yield something. And so, but there's going to be trial and error. There's going to be some testing. So anyway, what I was going to say is, if you decide that your budget is, let's say, 200 pieces of mail, just for example, I don't know. So for a postcard, it's a little cheaper. For a letter, you get again, you pay usually first class postage plus the paper and the envelope and whatnot. So it's at least 50 cents per unit, right, for a stamp. Is that what it is? 55 cents, something like that. And Bob just reminded me, the Renatus iOS that Bob's going to go into later this afternoon, it has a direct mail service that you can just plug right into. Absolutely. But when I started, I did the old version where I physically wrote the letters for months, and then I hired somebody to do it. And then from then on, I haven't been writing it. It's systemized more, but I still have a person who's physically doing it. Now, by the way, if you use one of these online services, they have a human, but they're human over there. It's not, you don't have to deal with it. You just put in the order. Anyway, what I was going to say is, if you have a budget for 200 units of mail this month, instead of getting a list of 200 and sending one item, I would not do that. I would prefer to narrow the list down to like 25 and send 8 pieces of mail sequentially to those 25 people. Because by the time you get to 5, 6, 7 repetitions, that's the person's going to actually start to take notice and to reply. Now, if you were to do a statistical curve, when you send out the first mailer, you might get a little blip, right? A little bit of response. But then the second and the third is kind of flat. But then once you get to like 7 or 8, there's another spike. And so I'd much rather have you send a series of letters. Now, if you're going to do a series, and I do think you should, there's got to be some way to tie it together, like thematically. So whether you have a real unique name, or in a company name, or a logo, or some color scheme, you want it to be thematically the same. So it's not 10 random people. It's the same person 7 or 8 times. That makes sense. So yes, do a series. Yes, have some kind of a thematic, whether it's a tagline, a logo, a business name, a DBA, which is doing business as. So whatever your LLC is, it may not be memorable, but if you're like, Deluxe Home Buyers, and they have a nice little logo up there, they're going to recognize, oh, it's the same person over and over. So that part is important. Let me get back over to Mike. Says, if the foreclosure is listed on the MLS, do you have to make the offer through an agent? Yes. If it's on the MLS, that agent has a contract with the owner to represent it. Whether you make the offer through the listing agent or your own agent, you could decide. I don't always use my own agent, but yeah, you have to go through the agent. So Joey, touching back on a previous question, if a foreclosure is listed in the MLS, you have to make the offer through the agent. Hey, same question. Great, we covered it. Yeah, it's considered bad form to try to work with the homeowner directly because they hired an agent to represent them. And in some areas, it's just unethical. I don't know if it's illegal. I mean, if illegal for me, I don't know if it's illegal. I'm licensed. So if I see something in the MLS and I go and talk to the homeowner, I've violated my licensing requirements, which is not to interfere with other people's clients. If you're just a member of the public and you go directly to the person, you might get a slap on the wrist. It's certainly unethical now that you know that you shouldn't do that. But you're also going to cause strained relations. And if you really want the property, just go through the agent. Offer whatever you're going to offer, regardless, and they'll figure it out on their end, right? So you still make your investment offer. You don't have to worry about whatever the list price is. You make your offer that will work for you. Terry says, should I get a real estate license to buy properties? You certainly could if you wanted to. I don't think you need to, so don't get that first. Go ahead and keep trying to do real estate. Sorry, I'm looking at, thought I heard a small voice out in the hallway, but I don't see any feet. So, I think What was I saying? MLS. Oh yeah. So I was an investor for 6 years before I got my real estate license, and I hired real estate agents the entire time, and I was glad to do it. And then eventually I started to do the math, and my skill set came up to the level where, like at the beginning, I couldn't handle all the marketing of the properties and all the acquisitions. So I hired somebody. But then later, it made sense for me to have a license. And even if I had an assistant, I could keep all those commissions in house, right? So anyway, no. The short answer is no. Don't go get a license first. Let's do some real estate investing. Use an agent for their purpose. And if you really love it, then go get a license. The reason I say that is a lot of people think, oh yeah, I'll just get a real estate license and then I'll have a bunch of properties. But the reality is this process that we're talking about of getting a foreclosure list, marketing to people, that's well, anyone who's licensed will know this. If you go to a real estate agent's training, it's the same thing. They say, okay, where are the people that need to sell their houses? How do we get in front of them? We send them a letter. We send them a postcard. We send them a marketing analysis. We interact with them on social media. It's all you're still gonna have to learn how to generate business no matter what. So just do it without the added expense and the added documentation and training and whatever of getting a real estate license. Later, eventually, if it makes sense, sure. I think it's an advantage to me to have a license, but it's certainly not how I got started. So direct mail. So let me speak one more word to direct mail, which is the language that you would put in there. I'm going to use my annotations again. So in a direct mail piece, you need to have a clear call to action. Actually, let me do one more thing. So you need to have urgency, curiosity, call to action, contact info. All right. Marlene, if you are a realtor and buy and sell property, do I have to split my commission with my sponsoring broker? I don't. Yeah, short answer is yes. That's not how I would phrase it. I get what you're saying, but what happens is when you get a license, you do usually have to work underneath like you said, a sponsoring broker or a designated broker or a managing broker, whatever your state calls it. You have to place your license under a supervising broker, would be like the catch-all term. But however, your fee structure is not set by the state. So in other words, like in the brokerage that I'm with, I do not own the brokerage. I don't want to own a brokerage, but when I transact business, I have a certain exemption for my own personal transactions. I'd still pay a fee to the brokerage. It's less than a retail transaction, but that's the price you pay. You know, it would cost me way more to open a brokerage. So yeah, I pay a fee to my broker to transact any deals, because as a licensee, you have to do certain disclaimers and make sure that it's clear, you know, that you've disclosed your licensing status to the customer or the client, and your broker is responsible for documenting and maintaining all those records. So yeah, you do have to pay a fee to your broker, but it's not set in stone, and it doesn't have to be the exact same amount that you pay on a retail transaction. So maybe you could shop around and find a broker that works with folks that do a lot of individual transactions. Steven says, do you have any recommendations on mailing companies to do the direct mail? So the only one I could truly endorse is the one that is part of Renatus iOS. So Bob will cover that in a few hours. But ultimately, they're competitive. So for you to research some and maybe try some out, I would recommend that and see if you get a better response from one or the other. But no, outside of the one that we provide, I don't have another company that I could think of by name. All right, so let's go back to your direct mail bullet points. So urgency. So when I send a letter, I usually lead off with something like, so, you know, I introduce myself, hey, I'm an investor, and I'm looking for 2 more houses this month. And so by putting something like that, they think, oh, there's limited capacity for purchasing. And honestly, I do have some capacity. I haven't hit it recently, In other words, even if I'm doing 2 or 3 deals, I can usually do more. But at some points, I have hit capacity to where I didn't want to take on a new deal. And so I want your direct mail to have, I want it to be truthful, right? It doesn't have, you decide what truthful is. I 100% encourage and advocate and recommend truthfulness. And for me to say I'm looking for 2 properties to buy this month is 100% true. But the subtext is that I may not be able to buy theirs, which is true. If I get 3 calls this week, so it's one thing for me to buy 3 or 5 properties a month. But if I get 3 calls today, I'm going to prioritize which one I think is the best deal. And if I get back to the other person 3 or 4 days later, then maybe I'll get it, maybe I won't. So anyway, I just want to acknowledge that anything you put in your marketing has to be correct and true. So urgency, I'm looking to buy 2 properties this month. And if you think that it would help you to sell your house, let's talk. So something like that. The thing about curiosity, so my favorite thing to put, let me see where I am on this, curiosity. The thing about curiosity is if I just say, hi, I want to buy your house, that's kind of, I don't know, it's not exciting, it's not specific, it's sort of generic. Everyone's like, oh, great, they want to buy the house. What I've devised, and you guys are welcome to use it because there's so many different areas. I don't know if there's going to be a ton of overlap. Maybe there is, and I'm going to shoot myself in the foot, but I guess I'm open to that risk. My go-to currently is, and you guys, I was going to say you could write this down. I'll go ahead and type it. If it would help you to sell your house quickly, I have an idea, doesn't have to be capitalized. I think you will like. Give me. And then they're like, dang, what's this idea? I got to hear the idea. What is it? So that's just what I use. You're welcome to use some approximation to that. You're welcome to think of something else. But the point is, I want to plant a little mind worm that it's hard to get out. So they say, if I help you to sell your house quickly, I have an idea. You're like, what is it? What's the idea? What could it be? The only way to find out is to give me a call. So curiosity of some variety. But you could even, I hate to say this, but you guys are creative and you're going to do your own thing anyway. It's almost like clickbait. Right? You could go 100% clickbait formula, even though instead of a click, it's a phone call. And you could do something like, find out what 3 Downers Grove citizens learned the hard way. It's like, what does that even mean? You know, and so when they call, you're like, yeah, well, they didn't call on time and they got their house foreclosed. That's what they learned the hard way. The point is to get the conversation, not to construct an entire alternate reality. But again, make your curiosity something that will pique their interest. If you're an expert at copywriting, just do some clickbait. Anyway, so the clear call to action is give me a call. At this point, really, I really just want a phone call. Grace says, I'm originally from Downers Grove. Glad to have you, Grace. Welcome. I shouted out Downers Grove because the home office today is, I don't know if any of the people are there, but that's where the home office for this broadcast is. Give me a call. So let me think. Here's what you're going to want to do, and you can do when you know what you're doing, but don't do it first. Everybody wants to just put a system in place where they put a web page with a form that people can fill out, gather the information. I don't have to talk to anybody. I don't have to mess with it. We all want that, but it's just less effective. The most effective way to initiate a transaction is a conversation with somebody. And then depending on how it goes, we can use technology later. The web forms, the links, the clicks. Yeah, there's a place for that. But when we're starting out, the very first thing you need, and by the way, if I tell you you need a landing page, you need a funnel, you need a website, and all this stuff, you're going to use that as your excuse to not get started. I want you to start on Monday and find a property and go through these steps. And by Friday, I want you to be talking to people about selling their house. If I tell you to go get a website, you're going to spend the next month tinkering around with your website. So do you need a website? It's up to you. You could certainly use a website. That's not first. It's not next. The first thing is a conversation with somebody that I'm generating. And so I put on the phone. I don't put a website or an email or a URL or anything on the mailer. It's just my name and my number. If they want to find out what this is, what's this great idea, what do these people avoid, they got to call the number. And that's where I want them. Lorraine says, how do you handle your direct mail when you're looking to buy for yourself? You put in your business name and your broker's info. So I do need to put a disclaimer that I am a licensed agent and the name of the brokerage. Now, what you'll need to do if you're licensed is find out what your state requires in terms of disclosure. So yeah, so mine I do disclose. This is from a licensed agent for this brokerage. But if they go to my brokerage website, it's a pretty big brokerage and it's just retail, right? They can look for homes that are listed. They can see the listed agents. And so they're not going to get any information about what I'm talking about here. They still have to call me. Does that make sense? So yeah, if you're licensed, you need to know what your disclosure requirements are, including direct mail. And yes, but I don't put a link. I don't put a website. I don't want them going. So the reason why is this. I don't want them going to the website, reading the information about foreclosure and deciding whether or not I can help them before we have a conversation. That's what's going to happen. They're going to, oh no, that's not for me. They're going to assume what it is and they're going to say it's not for them. So, okay, give me a call. So then all of this, give me a call and then obviously that's your phone number. So everything you see over here is all this stuff is applicable to all these methods. So if I'm doing direct mail, urgency, curiosity, contact info, call to action. If I'm doing a phone call, remember I told you if I search and I can find their number, I don't mind calling them. So I call them. Here's how I do phone calls. Write this down. I'll call once. If they don't pick up, I will not leave a message. But within an hour, I'll call again. So they'll recognize the same number. I'll call again, and the second time I will leave a message. Hey, this is Gavin. I'm a real estate agent here in town, and I've got a methodology here that if it would help you to sell your house quickly, I've got a cool little strategy that I've been using. And I'd love to chat with you about it. And so give me a call back, and here's my number. And then so again, urgency, curiosity, call to action. They got my number. Same with door knocking. So when I go knock on the door, I have the list of addresses and names. I can go right to their houses. It's more time intensive because I got to physically drive there. I'll drive to their house, I'll knock on the door, and I'll have the same conversation only verbally. If they don't answer, if you're going to spend time driving to a second location, meaning instead of just your office, if you're going to drive around to different properties, they're not going to answer the door, even if they're home. Sometimes they will, but probably percentage-wise, very few. So you leave a note, and guess what that note has? It's basically the same as your direct mail. It could literally be your direct mail piece. You leave it there. Now they know who knocked on their door, and if they want information, they can call. Okay. Property finders is just when you have somebody other than you who's doing these exact same things. So in other words, you have somebody who is in your organization that you hire, or you don't even have to hire them as an employee. You can just say, do these steps, and if you find a property, bring it to me, and we'll work on it. All right. Eric, in the Twin Cities area, what type of loan to seek? The one about property that's condemned and can't be purchased with a traditional mortgage. So we don't have cash for it. Eric, I did not issue the challenge for you to try to stump me, but you in some ways have. The only answer I can give directly, unless there's a specific program that I'm not aware of, which is possible, the answer to everything is private money. So in other words, there's a network of private investors who have funding available that they can use to buy real estate. And so, you know, we've got training for that, not today, but necessarily there's a private money class. But yeah, private investors, that's the answer. Roy, do you use a ringless voicemail drop or leave the message for each lead? You know what? I've really been on the fence. And part of this is a personal vendetta. So as far I'm just manually doing it because I'm doing a fairly small list. I hate getting the ringless things, and maybe it's because now hold on, I want to be full disclosure. Maybe it's because it's like 5 times a day, and it's always either health insurance or some kind of MLM, and I get those all the time, and so I don't like them, and I'm not going to respond to them. But this is different. I agree. I haven't used a ringless. I would recommend that if you want to, you can certainly try. Yeah, I haven't done that yet. So good question. All right. So what we've done so far. You've got a list of names and addresses. Now you've got at least three, and this is the three. If you can only do one, you should knock doors because it costs, other than gas and printing up some flyers, the only limit is time. So if you're the person with a lot of time and not a big budget for marketing, then just drive around to the different properties. So now you've got names and addresses. You've got methodologies for approaching folks. And where does that leave us? I'll tell you right now. It leaves us with the seller information sheet. So David earlier asked, "What's the one thing you should never say to the person?" I mean, obviously, there's not one. Don't be obscene or mean, but don't worry about saying the wrong thing, right? So obviously, we're within the bounds of social propriety. Don't worry about saying the wrong thing. Should I say I'm an investor? Should I say I'm an agent? Should I say I want to buy your house? Or should I say, hey, what's going on? There's a lot of variability and flexibility. I don't want people to be nervous and worried about saying the wrong thing. I will tell you the simplest stuff. So I'll give you a through line of things to say, but don't worry about saying I'm brand new, I've never done a deal before, because that is what people are. If you're brand new, you've never done a real estate transaction, and you're feeling nervous about it, I feel for you, and don't worry about it. They don't care. So we'll get into that here in just a moment. But right now, I want to get into the seller information sheet. So what happened is this. We got a name, did some marketing, we're in front of somebody, and now you're like, great, I'm in front of somebody. I've got their attention. What do I say to them? So actually before, let me think what I'm going to do. Well, I'll leave it on here. I can just make my notes up top. So this is correct information, by the way. So let's say somebody calls me back. I left a message or I sent them a letter. They call and say, hey, I got your letter. You said something about buying my house. Okay, that's where we are at this point in the process. I say, great. Yeah, thanks for the call. Hey, just remind me, I sent out a few of those letters. Will you remind me which address is this? Steve says, will you send direct mail before running your numbers? Absolutely. I haven't run any numbers yet. So in other words, when I get a list of pre-foreclosures, I don't analyze any of those properties. Now I might look and see, I might scan for like mobile homes. Mobile homes is an investment strategy. It's not mine. So I might scan for mobile homes. I might scan for the very lowest of the low. I might scan for luxury properties, and I take those out because I want to hit the median price point, plus or minus a little bit of a ratio. So other than screening the list, I'm not analyzing each property at all. Yeah. So then they call and it's great. It's the call. I sent out a few letters. I'm not sure. I can't remember which one was yours. Remind me the address again. All right. So this is your list. So you got the name. Is this the best number to call you? Do you have an email address you'd be willing to share with me? Now, at some point, like this is really what we're going to get to is the property details, because this is when we can run the numbers. The fellow who just asked, have you run the numbers yet? No, I haven't, because I need this information first. So if somebody calls, other than getting whatever their best contact information, I'm basically just verifying. Remind me your name. Is this the best number? And I may or may not get the email right now. I might get it at the end. But this is really what we need to analyze the property. Remind me the address, and where is that again, and how many bedrooms is it, and how many bathrooms is it, and how many garage stalls is it, and how many stories is it, what's the square footage. So it's all right here. So by the way, this sheet is in the Vernatus back office. So if you remember Vernatus, if you've got the education, you can get this. It's available in the forms library. But if not, that's fine. I know there's some folks on here that have not joined Vernatus yet, and that's Okay, fine. I think that by the end of today, you'll still be able to go out and search out some foreclosure properties. You'll just have to create your own, right? But look how easy it is. It's just basically their contact information and the property details, right? That's it. Once I have that information, I'm going to pivot and I'm going to gather. Well, I'm not going to gather. I'm gathering the information, then I pivot, and there's three items of conversation. That will determine moving forward. Property info. Oh yeah, this is it. Financial info. So a lot of times people ask me if I have a script. I do not. But if you use this framework, you should be fine. It's just, in other words, so instead of a script that you follow, it's just a conversational structure, so you don't forget anything. So the first one is property info. We covered that down here, right? You gather the details of the property. Second one is the financial info. I don't have it on this sheet, but you guys can certainly create your own sheet that will remind you. The financial info is basically what's the mortgage balance, what's the monthly payment, how many payments are you behind? That's basically it. Mortgage balance, monthly payment, how many payments are you behind? Did you get that? Next one, the last one is personal information. So I usually go in this order. So tell me about the property, tell me about the mortgage, and then the last, tell me about your situation. And that's literally a great segue. Like, you don't have to worry about crafting the perfect question. I just say, tell me about your situation. And if they don't dive right in, they say, what do you mean? Well, it seems like we're about to talk about whether I could buy your house, and if that would help you, what do you got going on? I mean, that's how I do it. So if they're playing coy, I'll just restate it a couple times. But usually when I say, tell me about your situation, they know context, and they say, oh yeah, well, I lost my job, or I got a divorce, or the house needs repairs. There's basically, I'll tell you, the commonalities are job loss, bankruptcy, divorce, death. So a lot of times somebody has died, and we're going to be dealing with a family member. That's like the vast majority of all these foreclosures, because those trigger an inability to pay the mortgage, and therefore we either got to figure out a way to get the money or sell the house. So at the end of this, this is a great place. I'm gonna give a little teaser on the property analysis, because a couple of people have already asked, well, how do we know if it's a deal? How do we analyze the property? So I'm gonna start on that. We'll of course, we're not gonna have much time before lunch, but I'll start on it, and then we'll finish it up later. So once I've gathered all this information, before I get off the phone with them, let me see, I'm gonna do a new one down here. There's a thing called a BAM FAM, which stands for always book a meeting from a meeting. So if I'm on the phone with somebody, before I hang up, we clearly identify when we're going to talk again. So they just called me. I gathered this information. I say, this is what I say. And it's almost like a script. You can write it down if you'd like to, or you can just remember. I say, this looks like a deal I'd be interested in. In order to know for sure, I'd have to come look at the property. When can I come see the property? And if they say, well, what are you going to offer? How much can you pay? Yada, yada, yada. I just stick to my guns, because I can't really make a good offer unless I've seen it. So I say, well, it definitely is something I'm interested in. But in order to make an offer, I have to come see the property. When can I come see the property? Okay. So as soon as they say, tomorrow at noon or whatever, now we book the appointment. I say, great, I'll see you then. Then as soon as I hang up, I have the address. I've got the vital stats of the size and the age and all that kind of stuff. I go straight to the MLS, and in 5 minutes, I've got a CMA. CMA stands for comparative market analysis. So I've got the comps. I now know what the house is worth. Actually, I saw the question got cleared off. I was deferring it for a moment. She says, what do you do if there's multiple offers? Well, the only thing you can do is make your best offer. Do not compete with people just so you can win the offer. You're still going to analyze the deal, make your best offer, and if somebody wants to pay more than you, then they get the house, almost for sure. The only exception to that would be if you find your dream house that you have to live in, or you'll never be happy. Then that's a different conversation. But from an investing standpoint, we have our system. We analyze the property, and then we make our offer. And if somebody beats us, then they get the house. So no worries. All right. So I was going to go into. If I gather the information, I hang up the phone. Before I get to their house, I do the CMA. CMA stands for comparative market analysis. I pull the comps. The comps. Okay. So this is actually the next section, but I'm gonna squeeze in a little analytical area here. So I'm gonna give you a formula, but we'll draw on it a couple times, but I want you to have it that you can reference. So this formula will be down here on the screen. ARV. When I do comps or the CMA, comps is comparable properties. That's individual properties that I look at. CMA is a comparative market analysis. That's analyzing multiple properties and coming up with a trend and a pattern. ARV is the after repaired value. I guess I should define this before I use the formula. So the ARV means after the home is all fixed up, what can I sell it for? Okay. So the formula that we use is ARV minus repairs. We'll go into that in a moment. ARV minus repairs minus whatever holding costs you may have. Your holding costs are going to be unique to you depending on how you're funding the deal. If you have cash in your own account, you may still have some, opportunity cost, obviously, but you still, if you're using a credit card, if you're using your own retirement account, whatever's appropriate, you'll have some financing fees, but you'll also have things like a power bill, trash bill, water bill, any of that kind of stuff. So ARV minus repairs, minus holding costs, minus your profit margin. That's profit. That equals your offer. Okay, so that's the pattern. A lot of people will give you a percentage. Well, I'll just do ARV minus 70% divided by 7. I don't know. I do a customized one every time. So we're going to talk about the repairs in a moment. Holding costs, again, if you know you're borrowing money, then you'll have to figure out how much is that money costing you. Profit, I will tell you this. When I shoot for a profit target, my profit projection is 10 to 20% of the ARV. So I start my analysis at 20% because that's more profit. But also, if I have to negotiate it down, I got some wiggle room. I will not. I hate to be so concrete, but almost for sure, I won't like it. I won't enter a deal for less than 10% profit projection because if something goes wrong with my budget or my timing, then it's real quick before I bottom out and I maybe may not make any money. So profit projection, 10 to 20% of the ARV. So if your ARV is 400,000, that's the price I can sell it for. Then my profit is between 40 and 80,000. Now, if it's more, then by all means, but no less. Okay. All right, this is a good place to break. Let me get a couple of questions. Two people, Terrence and Steven, have both asked about closing costs. So there's two different answers. When I'm buying a property, this offer price is basically that's the amount I'm willing to pay. You need to understand that you're gonna have to do an analysis for your area. Typically, 1 to 2% of the purchase price in closing costs. Now that's in a cash purchase, no lender fees, but just in a cash purchase. So you'll need to know that if you're offering, I'm going to do some math here on a calculator, and we'll use 1.5 to split the difference. If you're buying a house for $300,000, you may have another $4,500 in closing costs. So yeah, I mean, if you know that for sure, plug it in and just subtract it off your offer price. But it's going to be more or less, then yeah, make the last adjustment at the very end. But when you're selling a property, so this is different. When you're selling the property, so this ARV, actually that was a better question than I initially gave it credit for. When you're selling the property, that's not the same as your net. So usually your net is going to be, if you calculate brokerage commissions, your net is going to be more like 92.5% of whatever your ARV is. So if you're selling it for $500,000, you're actually going to come out with a net of like 462. But that's why I'm doing this budget. Does that make sense? Anyway, this is just the tip of the iceberg. We're going to go into the analysis 1 or 2 more times, but I do need to throw it back over to Dave for lunch. One last question, Rana. Sometimes as an investor, even though you may not be the highest offer, oftentimes you can close faster due to non-traditional funding resources, aka hard money, private money. Yeah, I agree. If you're making a cash offer to close in 7 days, even if it's less, it still might be better than a person who's offering a higher price, but they've got to go through an inspection, an appraisal, they've got to get a loan, they've got to go through underwriting, all that stuff. So great points, everybody. And I think we've done a good job. We're talking to a homeowner, and we're about to sit down and finish the analysis and make the offer. So we'll do that after lunch. Jay, is it time to turn it back over to you?
Yeah, we're doing great. Thank you so much for that training this morning, Gavin. That was superstar stuff, and we knew we were going to get that from you. So here's what we're going to do, folks. I want to remind everybody that we're going to take a lunch break. When we come back from the lunch break, we're going to hear more